Hello, my name is Jairo Lozano. We are in the agroecological farm Valeria, and today we are going to talk about a fundamental element in agriculture: the soil. The soil is important because it gives support to all plants. It also generates very important interactions so that our plants are in a state of comfort and develop properly. We treat the soil as a living entity, precisely because of all these interactions that occur in it. And in it, there are millions and millions of microorganisms that are the ones that give us that balance, which really make this soil is a substrate with many nutrients for all our plants. When we intervene the soil in a friendly way and make it to be in total balance, the plants develop in the best way. This implies that we have healthy food, nutritious food, and that we do not have so many difficulties with pests and diseases, since there are theories such as that of Dr. Shibusu, who spoke of trophobiosis, where if an organism is well fed, it will hardly be affected by diseases. Precisely what we are looking for with the soil. We pamper the soil, so that it is in harmony, and all our plants take advantage of these nutrients and are also healthy and strong. The farm is dedicated to organic food production, and we respect agroecological principles of production. In these principles, the soil is one of our greatest allies, and that is why today we want to show you some of the activities that we do to enrich the soil, to have it in such comfort. In addition to practices that prevent soil degradation, or simple moments like the rain does not take away all this nutritious soil. This soil that we have already worked, and that is in harmony for the production of vegetables. Some of the practices that we carry out are, for example, terraces. The terraces are these scales where we are, that these scales allow us as operators to work without generating any type of problem to our integrity, to our health, avoiding lumbar pains or back pains. Also, the terrace allows that everything. One of the activities that we constantly do to enrich these soils is to provide quality organic matter, and with this contribution we accumulate over time some types of substrates of materials that remain in this soil to provide nutrients and stability to the products that we are taking out at the moment and to products that in the future we are going to establish or plant in them. The soil has some layers or horizons. The first layer that we find in it is organic matter. A layer that is easily recognized because they are dark soils. They are black soils. Underneath these layers of black soils, there are already some changes in terms of color, and that also influences when it comes to agriculture. Let's say that the soils that are very reddish, which are the layers that are under this black soil, are soils that are very rich in certain minerals, but they are minerals that are not available for the plants, because they are generally associated with other minerals that encapsulate them and do not allow them to work. Each one of the layers that we find in organic matter, each one of the centimeters of depth, has totally different microorganisms. So another practice is to use tools that allow us to work without the need to turn or move the soil in a drastic way. As nowadays motorized equipment, fuel equipment, these practices allow the microorganisms that normally their habitat, their comfort zone is in the first 10 centimeters of soil depth, to stay there really doing the work or doing the job they do. From 10 centimeters down we find other types of microorganisms that are also important, that are generally degrading soil components, releasing minerals for the plants and generating aeration zones and zones through which the roots of all the plants can easily pass. For us, we have an area of action that is the area where our plants are going to go, 80 centimeters in some paths against the slope, 20 centimeters wide, that is, each one of these scales is 1 meter wide, the farm. As such, all the productive lots have terraces in the same conditions as this one, that we are showing you today. For the tillage process, we use the tool that I'm telling you about, this Hercules or Ovieldo, which allows us to just loosen the soil without the need to turn it over. And the weeds that we are removing, in the area where we are going to plant, we use them to serve as cover, which is another of the practices we have for soil conservation, since these weeds are in charge of conserving humidity. They are also in charge of protecting the plants that we plant, preventing new weeds from coming out. And with time they degrade, which makes them become again nutrients or fertilizer for all the plants that we establish. Because that is the purpose of these weeds or the cover that we make with them. We are going to do a practice of what aeration is, what we are showing you. And for that, Father, please help me, we are going to organize the terrace a little bit. We're loosening the soil. We're not turning it over, and the weeds that go with that soil, they're going to serve as a cover for that soil to protect it. The depth of tillage that we're implementing is approximately 30 centimeters, because the vast majority of the plants that we establish require that depth for proper development, optimal development of their roots. Over here, we have some friends who are indicators of the health of the soil. They are working for us. They are helping us with the work, because the earthworms are in charge of the aeration part of the tillage and they nourish the soil. They feed on organic matter, and their excrement becomes nutrients for all the crops that we want to establish in this soil. On the farm also as a conservation practice, we make a crop rotation in a sequence, as this allows us to cut cycles of diseases or pests, and also allows us, plants have some exudates that are releasing each previous cycle, as a source of nutrition, as all plants do not consume the same nutrients at the same time. Then this rotation allows us the crop that we have established consumes what it requires and leaves us a nourished soil for the next cycle. The rotation we do it in 5 levels. We start with a tuber. We continue with a leguminous plant that we can use as green manure, as consumption as a source of seed. We continue with a leaf plant, an example of which is a lettuce or cabbage. Then we continue in the rotation with a flowering plant. Then we can establish cauliflowers or aromatic medicinal plants that use the flower. Then we continue with a fruit plant. We finish that cycle and we start again. After we harvest the fruits, we continue with a tuber again. Then we continue with the tillage to see if we can sow and soon harvest in this lot, in this soil. We have talked today about several practices that are performed in order to pamper the soil, but the ones that are finally pampered are our plants. With all these tasks that we perform to enrich our soil, we are going to do a planting practice as we normally do on the farm, so that our viewers can observe that pampering the soil is in every type of process. At no time we neglect it. So over here we have some lettuce seedlings, which are leaf plants, and as the previous crop on this terrace was a legume. So we are already complying with one of the practices that we have mentioned in the program, which is an efficient crop rotation. After the legume we continue with leaf. We also have a fertilizer, a compost that we make at the farm, with which we are guaranteeing that the nutrients that these plants need to develop, they can have them. Besides this compost, it helps us to provide organic matter to the soil. It helps us to pamper our microorganisms. So let's get to work. We already had the right terrace. We already have a cover of the weeds that were left over on the terrace. Now we are simply going to move them a little bit in the area where our little plants are going to be planted. We make the holes. The little holes. We add organic matter to each one of them. And we are going to sow. The plants also allow us to play with their shapes and colors, because visually they are very attractive. So as you can see, we are creating a whole food garden. We are forming a whole garden of food. You can see that with the tool the soil was so loose that I do not need any other type of tool to make the holes. The soil is already so loose, so airy, that with my hand I can organize them. We return and repeat the work until we have sown all the seedlings that we had foreseen. According to the species, the planting density is approximately 25 centimeters between plants and between rows, because they will easily fill the spaces around them. They will have a sufficient area for optimal development, and when they fill all the spaces, they will also avoid competition from weeds. because they will cover the spaces where the weeds appear. Hello, Mother. Well, thank God. Here I have, Mother. All right, thank you. We are in the composting area of the farm. In this area we carry out a process called complete composting, which is a process where each one of these piles, this material, takes 3 months, 3.5 months approximately to be ready to be taken to the field and to be able to nourish our plants. We do not turn the pile every 20 days, which means that in those 3 months, 3.5 months with 4 or 5 turns we have for our pile to be ready. We opted for composting, because it is a process where we guarantee that most of the pathogens remain in it, die in this process, and we do not have any kind of problem in the field later on. The raw materials we use in this process have a backbone of five raw materials. The first of them is animal excrement or manure. The more diversity of manure, the more diversity of nutrients or microorganisms will enrich the final product. The second raw material that we use is biomass, and biomass is nothing more than all the plant material that we have available on the farm, which can decompose and enrich our compost. The third raw material is minerals. Manures provide us with a part, biomass provides us with another part of those minerals, but those that we cannot supply with those raw materials, we have the origin of the minerals as such, which are the rocks. Then we use rock flour, or in the case of these farms we have to make use of what we have at hand, what we have. Then we go to the farm and look for some potholes where we find something known as piedra boba or pena. That fourth element is the allies. We then bring large loads of microorganisms to degrade that organic matter and leave us with what we see in this. In this pile, which is a soil that no longer has an unpleasant odor, that has all the nutrients necessary for the optimal development of the plants and with which we are enriching the soil, we are generating a structure that in the future will be a suppressive soil, a balanced soil in such a way that we will not have to intervene. And we go to the fifth raw material, which in our case is a source of energy, a source of sweet. There are several options that we can always use as a farm. We can choose the raw material that we have at our disposal, or what is easier for us in the system mode. Our farm's worms are very important, because it's a source of protein with which we can feed many of our livestock component animals. They're also providing us with an enriched substrate with which we plant seedlings, and they provide us with a liquid leachate, a liquid humus with which we nourish many of our plants in the field. So over here we have our friends the worms. We are in another of the productive lots of the farm, also in terraces, but in a crop that has already been established in the past days. It is a crop that has been established for approximately 20 days, and we manage some processes, some nutrition protocols, where every 20 days we come and to our plants and to our soil, we provide what we have already seen in previous moments. That compost nourished and enriched with minerals and microorganisms. Then the process is, to each one of our plants and soil, we provide that compost, in solid form. But we also have a process in which from the humus of the earthworm leachate, we provide the rest of the nutrients that these plants will need for their development. And we will also strengthen with more microorganisms all that soil, that all those allies continue working around what we need and what the soil needs. Later on my father is going to come and he's going to also provide this liquid fertilizer with which, well, we enrich the soil even more, and we can also bring the nutrients to the plants that we don't manage to provide with this solid fertilizer. Finally, and as a soil conservation practice that is just as important as the others we have seen in the program, there are the cover crops, since they are responsible for generating moisture conservation, generating environments conducive to the reproduction of microorganisms, avoiding competition between the main plants and weeds, and they also generate ideal spaces for the optimal development of the plants. Well, today we have seen many strategies to conserve our soil, to protect it as well, and that our plants are happy when they are in their normal process of development.